There's an herb hiding in your kitchen, your tea cabinet, maybe even your supplement stack right now, that could be quietly pushing your blood pressure into dangerous territory. And the worst part? Most people think they're being healthy by taking it. We're going to break down exactly what this herb does inside your body, the specific enzyme it shuts down, why it causes your body to hold on to sodium like a sponge, and who absolutely needs to avoid it. There's also a modified version of this herb that gives you the benefits without the risks. Most people have never heard of it. But first, let's play a quick game. Before we reveal what this herb is, think about the clues. If you consume too much of it, your body starts retaining sodium at an alarming rate. At the same time, it flushes out potassium. Your blood pressure climbs. You might start getting muscle cramps out of nowhere. And in serious cases, your heart rhythm gets thrown off completely. Arrhythmias, the kind that land people in emergency rooms. Got a guess? Drop it in the comments. Most people get this wrong, and that's exactly why this information matters. The herb is licorice. Not what you expected, right? Most people think of licorice as harmless, a tea flavor, a candy, something your grandmother kept in a jar on the counter. But licorice root is one of the most pharmacologically active herbs on the planet. And it has a very specific mechanism that can wreck your cardiovascular system if you're not careful. Let's get into the science of why. Your body has a built-in safety system designed to protect you from producing too much cortisol. Cortisol is your primary stress hormone. In small amounts, it's essential. It helps you wake up in the morning, respond to threats, regulate inflammation. But when cortisol levels get too high and stay too high, bad things happen. Sodium retention, potassium depletion, elevated blood pressure, muscle cramps, heart arrhythmias. Chronically elevated cortisol is a cardiovascular nightmare. So your body evolved a failsafe. There's an enzyme called 11-beta-hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 2. We'll call it 11-BHSD2 because nobody needs to say that full name twice. This enzyme acts like a gatekeeper. Its job is to deactivate cortisol in specific tissues, particularly in the kidneys, where cortisol would otherwise bind to receptors that control sodium and potassium balance. Now here's a detail most people miss. Your body actually produces far more cortisol than aldosterone on any given day, roughly 100 to 1,000 times more, depending on your stress levels. That means cortisol is constantly circulating through your kidneys in massive quantities compared to aldosterone. If cortisol could freely bind to those mineralocorticoid receptors, it would completely overwhelm the system. Aldosterone wouldn't even get a chance to do its job. That's why 11-BHSD2 exists. It converts active cortisol into cortisone, which is inactive at those receptors. Think of it as a security guard standing between cortisol and your mineral balance. As long as that guard is doing its job, everything stays in check. Remove that guard, and you've got a flood of cortisol hitting receptors it was never supposed to reach. Here's where licorice enters the picture. The primary active compound in licorice root is called glycyrrhetinin. When you consume it, your gut bacteria and liver enzymes convert glycyrrhetinin into its active metabolite, glycyrrhetinic acid. Glycyrrhetinic acid has a very specific, very potent effect. It blocks 11-BHSD2. It takes out the security guard. The way it does this is through structural mimicry. Glycyrrhetinic acid has a molecular shape similar enough to cortisol that it can bind to the active site of the 11-BHSD2 enzyme and essentially park there, preventing the enzyme from doing its normal job of deactivating cortisol. It's competitive inhibition. The more glycyrrhetinic acid present, the more enzymes get blocked, and the more cortisol slips through to those mineralocorticoid receptors unchecked. When that enzyme gets suppressed, cortisol floods into those kidney receptors. Your body starts behaving as though it's producing massive amounts of aldosterone, the hormone that tells your kidneys to hold on to sodium and dump potassium. Except it's not actual aldosterone doing this. It's cortisol acting in a place it's not supposed to be, because the enzyme that would normally stop it has been shut down by the glycyrrhetinin in licorice. The medical term for this is pseudo-hyperaldosteronism. Pseudo meaning false. Your body mimics the symptoms of having an aldosterone-producing tumor, but there's no tumor. It's the licorice doing it. And this is actually a diagnostic trap that has fooled physicians for decades. Doctors have looked at patients presenting with high blood pressure, low potassium, and elevated sodium, run tests suspecting an adrenal tumor or a hormone disorder, and completely missed the fact that the patient was drinking licorice tea every morning. If you're taking licorice in any form and you see a doctor, tell them. That one piece of information could prevent a misdiagnosis and save you from unnecessary imaging, blood work, and invasive procedures. So, to make the mechanism crystal clear, licorice contains glycyrrhetine. Your body converts it to glycyrrhetinic acid. That metabolite blocks 11-BHSD2 through competitive inhibition. Without 11-BHSD2, cortisol floods mineralocorticoid receptors in the kidneys. Your kidneys then retain sodium and excrete potassium, as if they've been told to by aldosterone. Blood pressure goes up. Potassium drops. And your heart starts paying the price. Now let's talk about potassium, because this is where the danger really compounds. Studies consistently show that roughly 98% of the population does not get enough potassium. 98%. That's essentially everyone. The recommended daily intake is 4,700 milligrams, and most people aren't even close. They're getting maybe half that, sometimes less. Potassium isn't some minor nutrient you can ignore. It's a primary electrolyte for cardiac function. Your heart is an electrical organ. It relies on precise concentrations of electrolytes, potassium chief among them, to generate and conduct the electrical signals that keep it beating in rhythm. Specifically, potassium controls the repolarization phase of each heartbeat. After your heart muscle contracts, potassium ions flow out of the cells to reset the electrical charge so the next beat can fire. When potassium is too low, repolarization slows down. The electrical reset takes longer. That creates a window where abnormal electrical signals can sneak in and trigger irregular rhythms. That's when you get arrhythmias, palpitations, in severe cases, cardiac arrest. Beyond the heart, potassium is essential for nerve signaling, muscle contraction, blood sugar regulation, and glycogen storage in the liver. It's involved in energy production at a cellular level. It even plays a role in maintaining bone density by buffering acid load in the blood, reducing the amount of calcium your body leaches from bones to neutralize that acid. Without adequate potassium, your muscles cramp, your energy tanks, your bones weaken over time, and your metabolic health deteriorates across the board. So picture this. You're already part of the 98% who doesn't get enough potassium. That's your baseline. Now you start drinking licorice tea every day because you read somewhere that it supports your adrenals during stress. Or you're taking licorice root capsules from the health food store. What happens? You go from a potassium deficiency to a severe potassium deficiency. You accelerate the exact problem that was already putting your cardiovascular system at risk. That's the hidden danger here. Licorice doesn't just carry its own risks. It amplifies existing nutritional deficiencies that most people already have. Let's talk about how much is too much, because the threshold is lower than you'd think. Research shows that consuming more than 2 cups of licorice tea per day on a regular basis can be enough to start shifting your electrolyte balance. That's not a huge amount. 2 cups? Many people drink more than that without a second thought, especially if they're using it as a caffeine-free alternative or as part of a stress relief routine. For licorice candy, eating roughly 100 milligrams of glycyrrhetinic per day, which isn't a lot of candy, for just 2 weeks straight has been documented to cause clinically significant problems. We're talking hospitalizations, not from a massive single dose, but from steady, repeated, low-level exposure that accumulates in the body over time. And here's a detail that makes this even more dangerous. Glycyrrhetinic acid, the active metabolite, has a long half-life in your body. It takes time to clear. That means each dose you take is stacking on top of the previous one before it's fully eliminated. Even moderate daily consumption builds up a reservoir in your system. You might feel fine for the first week, the second week. Then suddenly in week 3, the accumulated burden crosses a threshold, and symptoms appear seemingly out of nowhere. That delayed onset is what catches people off guard. They don't connect the tea they've been drinking for a month to the blood pressure spike they're seeing today. That's the real trap. The danger isn't in 1 cup of tea or 1 piece of candy. It's the chronic, daily habit that slowly shifts your electrolyte balance until one day something breaks. A cramp that won't let go. A heart rhythm that stutters. Blood pressure readings that keep climbing despite everything else you're doing right. Certain groups face dramatically higher risk. If you're older, the danger increases because your kidneys are less efficient at managing electrolytes, and your 11-BHSD2 enzyme activity naturally declines with age. If you already have high blood pressure, licorice can push you further into the danger zone. If you're taking a diuretic, which already depletes potassium, adding licorice on top is like pouring gasoline on a fire. If you're on an ACE inhibitor or an ARB for blood pressure, licorice can work against those medications and partially undo what they're trying to accomplish. If you're on a synthetic corticosteroid like prednisone, combining that with licorice is genuinely dangerous. Prednisone is synthetic cortisol. Licorice blocks the enzyme that keeps cortisol in check. You're hitting the same system from two directions simultaneously. Now, before you throw out everything with licorice in it, there's important nuance here. Licorice has been used medicinally for over 3,000 years. It appeared in medical texts as far back as 1926 in Western medicine, and thousands of years before that in traditional Chinese and Ayurvedic systems. It's been used for ulcers, respiratory infections, coughs, sore throats, gut inflammation, and immune support. It works. The antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and gut-healing properties of licorice are well documented and genuinely valuable. The issue isn't that licorice is bad, it's that licorice is powerful. Powerful things require respect and understanding. You wouldn't take a pharmaceutical drug without knowing the side effects and contraindications. Herbs deserve the same consideration, especially one as pharmacologically active as licorice. From an evolutionary perspective, there's actually a logic to why this compound exists in the plant. For most of human history, sodium was scarce. Our ancestors ate diets rich in potassium from fruits, vegetables, and wild plants, but had limited access to sodium. A compound that helped the body retain sodium would have been genuinely useful for survival. Populations that consumed licorice-containing plants in sodium-poor environments may have actually benefited from the mild aldosterone mimicking effect. The problem is that modern diets have completely flipped that ratio. We're drowning in sodium from processed foods and starved of potassium because we don't eat enough whole plant foods. The very mechanism that helped our ancestors survive now works against us in a modern dietary context. What was once an advantage is now a liability. So here's the solution. There's a modified form of licorice called DGL, which stands for deglycyrrhetinated licorice. The name tells you exactly what it is. They've removed the glycyrrhetin, the compound responsible for blocking that protective enzyme. What you're left with is licorice that still delivers the gut-healing, immune-supporting, anti-inflammatory benefits without messing with your cortisol pathway, your sodium-potassium balance, or your blood pressure. DGL works particularly well for digestive complaints. The flavonoids and other compounds in licorice stimulate mucus production in the stomach lining, which acts as a protective barrier against acid. That's why licorice has such a strong reputation for helping with ulcers and acid reflux. With DGL, you're keeping that entire therapeutic pathway intact while stripping out the one compound that causes cardiovascular trouble. It's targeted, it's smart, and it's widely available at most health food stores and online. If you want to use licorice for digestive issues, for ulcer support, for immune health, DGL is the way to go, especially if you plan to use it long-term, especially if you have any cardiovascular risk factors whatsoever. You get the therapeutic upside without the electrolyte disruption. One more thing worth noting. If you've been consuming regular licorice and you're experiencing symptoms like unexplained high blood pressure, muscle cramps, fatigue, or heart palpitations, the good news is that these effects are typically reversible. Stop the licorice, and in most cases, your body will recalibrate within 1 to 2 weeks. Potassium levels come back up, sodium retention normalizes, blood pressure comes down. But you have to actually stop. And you have to recognize that the licorice was the cause in the first place, which most people never connect. If symptoms have been severe or prolonged, getting blood work done to check your potassium and sodium levels is a smart move. Your doctor can also monitor your blood pressure recovery to make sure everything is trending back to normal. Herbs are, on the whole, remarkably safe. The complication rates from herbal supplements are a fraction of what we see with pharmaceutical medications. That's data, not opinion. But safe doesn't mean consequence-free, and natural doesn't mean you can ignore dose, duration, and individual risk factors. Licorice is the perfect example. An ancient, proven, genuinely beneficial herb that becomes a serious cardiovascular risk when used carelessly by the wrong person, in the wrong amount, for the wrong duration. Know what you're taking. Know how it works. Know when it's not for you. If this changed how you think about the supplements in your cabinet, subscribe. We break down the health information that actually matters, the stuff most people never hear about until it's a problem.